Okay, everyone, shall we? We shall. We're here. Aqui. Wagwan.
We're there.
Yeah.
Yes, man.
Yes, man.
Hola.
Hola, Avita.
Sí.
Sí, mommy. I'm gonna sing now. What you're looking for, I got what you're looking for. What you're looking for, you ain't got to search no more. I got it right here. Queen Goddess Infinite Love. You're watching Conversations with Queen at Open Voice Media. Today's illustrious guest is Dr. Zelaika Hepworth Clarke. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yes, namaste.
I am Dr. Zelaika Hepworth Clarke, the Jamerican Sexologist, and I'm one of the leading experts in Osunality.
Osunality?
Yeah.
Pray tell, what is that?
Osunality is African eroticism and sensuality. It affirms the diversity of pleasures and so much more. It comes from Osun sexuality, or really Osun's honey. So the sweetness and it's good. There's a lot. It's a connecting force. It's a paradigm. It's sex critical, sex positive. It provides a different perspective that for me was very liberatory and allowed me to understand sexuality and myself in ways that I hadn't understood.
So it was self-discovery for you in a way.
It was SANFOKA.
SANFOKA.
So I got to have a deeper understanding of a past to learn from and begin to imagine a new future.
Did you walk in that future?
I've been thinking about it. There was moments that I felt liberated.
Liberated. So you would say that Osunality is connected with a liberation movement?
For me, it was.
For you. Amazing. We're going to hear a lot more about that. Tell us, how did you come to know so much about Osunality?
I've been studying human sexuality for over a decade. I have 3 degrees in sexuality. My master's and my doctorate in philosophy and human sexuality. And I went to Brazil and I did interviews and direct observations of ceremonies for Osun and just dived deep into the literature that was available and spoke to community members and other people who really know and embody Osun.
Okay, so you would say that it was an integrative, immersive experience. Like you integrated yourself into the Brazilian community, spiritual community, in a way where you were immersed by the experience yet still observing it and yourself.
Yeah, I used a research method called DECOLONIZIng AUTOETHNOGRAPhy. So I studied myself as I was also observing the culture around me and thinking critically and unlearning negative forces of oppression. So it was an experience, I would say.
Would you say, when you say you're unlearning negative forces of oppression, are you talking about your perspective, your mindset, maybe some pre-learned things that would have been brought into a community where those thoughts or perceptions wouldn't serve you to understand what was going on?
Yes. And it's deconstructing, it's reconstructing, it's thinking critically, it is having exposure to other narratives or other ways of knowing, other ways of being, other ways of different ways of understanding sexuality or what it means to be a human, or spirituality, or why we're here. There's different takes on that, and a lot of what we've come to understand of what it means to be a human or what is sexuality has been influenced by those who have been in positions of power. But there are other perspectives that have existed for thousands of years that have been marginalized or silenced. But I looked into some perspectives that were empowering to me.
Interesting. So for people that don't know what you're referring to when you say Osun, can you tell us where the word Osun came from, what it references?
I can't do justice, but I will try. Osun, when I think about Yoruba from modern day Nigeria, and that word being associated with orishas. There's over 400 kinds, and Osun represents a energetic matrix or force of nature, or maybe a rough translation of goddess or deity that is associated with fresh water, sweet water, such as rivers, lakes, waterfalls, and also just sensuality and joy and fertility and love and so many things. I know Osun to be the source, to be the first feminist.
The first feminist. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Very.
Within a cosmology, or the way there's stories associated with creation stories, and there's so many beautiful stories, and they're told in different ways, in different languages, and very powerful. That speaks to the importance of being respectful to all humans, not just masculine presenting or male perceived to be masculine, that all humans deserve respect.
Yes, they do. And just not considering the humans that you agree with. I think something that helps us to critically think often, or go against the grain of what we think to be true, is when we meet people we don't agree with. And if you don't agree with someone, it forces you to, hopefully, if you're critically thinking, re-examine what it is that you hold to be truths, facts, and opinions. And when you're able to do that, then you can either continue to disagree with someone and say, hey, that's not a worldview that I'm open to or want to look into based on the facts and information that I have or feelings. Or you can say, hey, wow, I've never thought of that, or I looked that up and that held to be true. And you begin to change your worldview by being exposed to either new things or different things that don't align with your current worldview. Could you talk more about how your experience changed some of your own personal worldview?
Sometimes when I hear information that goes against everything I've ever known, I resist naturally.
Right.
It's almost like rejection, like what? How could that be? Because all the references, they don't align. It doesn't support what I've already been told.
That's
so
where prejudice comes from.
I'm like, but wait, then I say to myself, am I not open-minded? And I believe myself to be open-minded. So I go back and consider the information again. And receive it in a way that I can not judge it from my conditioning, from everything that I've always known, but really consider it in the moment and how it is received in my body. And I tell you that it was very transformative to learn new ways of understanding what sex is, what gender is, that the way I've been conditioned to learn or to know has been influenced by patriarchy, has been influenced by certain perspectives that prevent me from understanding things in very deep ways. So, in understanding things in a different way, with the help of paradigms from motherland, from Africa, from different spiritual systems, was revolutionary, was emancipatory, was an experience that is hard to put in words. It was transformative, is the best way that I could put it, and really had me understanding our connection, how important nature is, how important self-love is, tuning into abundance consciousness and the diversity of pleasures, and letting go of fear, guilt, shame, and liberation became more clear.
Do you think there was a releasing such that you had I don't even want to call it an epiphany, but a moment of awareness or consciousness where you were experiencing liberation?
I did come to some moments of liberation when I had the privilege of studying Osunality full-time for months and contemplating Osun and practicing mindfulness and being in the present here and now and traveling to different spaces that respected women, that respected elders, that respected nature in really deep ways. It really allowed me to understand that a lot of the things I was taking for granted was not necessarily universal, that it was just one worldview and that there were other worldviews that I could relate to, that I found really empowering. And so the experience of liberation or an epiphany or letting go of the old lens that limited my way of viewing things, when the mind is expanded, it is hard to go back to old dimensions. So I was able to really expand my mind in a way that things that I couldn't even predict started happening to me. Like, I used to bite my nails, and then at some point I just didn't have the inclination to do so.
So you would say that this liberation journey that you went on provided healing in it of itself?
Yeah, I think in liberation I found that fear wasn't present. And I had a phobia, very serious, that I was very scared of snakes. I couldn't even talk about it before. And I was paranoid and could, like, things, I would look out for triggers and I could get panic attacks and know that it's completely irrational. I mean, if I opened a book,
that's what
I would
phobia is, right?
You know,
yeah.
just, and then learning about different orishas and different ways of knowing about nature and connection, and different paradigm, and I learned about Osunality, who lives half the year as male, half the year as female, and is associated with rainbows and connectivity and beautiful stories associated with Osunality, and also associated with serpent, is a snake that is eating its own tail and is in a circular way. And for whatever reason, I started seeing that triggers that I used to have were no longer present. That I said, oh, that would have scared me before, but it's not scaring me now. So I had indication that I was I was on my path of decolonizing. I was aware of new ways of being that I didn't even know could exist within who I was, that there was transformative shifts in the paradigm that I was the foundation of how I understood core concepts of my being.
That's amazing. First, I want to just say, wow, right? But and take a moment for that, just for that, for liberation. Yes, for liberation, And also say that my life experience has been similar, but in a different way. And it might be whether it was in Costa Rica at a yoga retreat or it was a Bembe here in the States, but being exposed to other spiritualities, African spiritualities, different ways of experiencing the world, different ways that people live, just being around different types of people in general. I was a very, very uptight young lady. I was like, oh no, don't do that. Oh my God. With everything. And I am like a different person than I was. And it's like, I see the world different. I feel connected to the world different because of those experiences. I don't have judgment for others and their behaviors in their world and their worldview like I used to. And it's not because a rule told me in a religion, but it just was lifted from my heart. And it's something I grew up with a lot, which was critical judgment in a highly religious home. So it's funny that the things that oppressed me, per se, were said to be things to liberate me. But yet, when I began to experience liberation for myself, it was the inclusiveness of understanding others. Even if I didn't understand, being aware that I didn't understand and therefore should reserve judgment, period, but also even any sort of conclusion whatsoever until I ventured into experientially or conversationally or through study a new understanding of whatever that subject or person was doing or whatever. I guess some people would say, how would you describe a world or a concept where you consider different worlds that different people are experiencing at the same time?
The pluriverse.
It's called the pluriverse.
Yeah, and just a couple things that I'd like to talk about is sometimes we know what we know and we know what we don't know, but there's a lot of what we don't know what we don't know. And what I found is part of the liberation process, which is not easy. It's, challenging in its own right, but that I began to know more about what I didn't know. I didn't know.
Exactly.
So I'm starting to be aware of more.
Yes.
And even being a leading expert, the more I learned about, the more I realized what I didn't know. I didn't even know how much I didn't know. Now I know a lot more than people that didn't have the opportunity to spend so much time studying and investigating and critiquing and embracing.
There's a lot of philosophers that say the first step to truly knowing is to know that you don't know. And so that's a wow moment for anyone's brain. That's that I don't know, some people call it the philosopher's stone. I would just call it liberation, when you begin to connect with your inner being and your outer beings, which are humans and nature and animals and all of that, at the same time, and you just become filled with a different understanding and connectivity that allows you to observe in a certain way, where the things already granted to you as a human being become useful in a much deeper way, so that you have that understanding you don't know, such as your senses. So how did your senses play a role in what it was that you experienced in your decolonizing autoethnographic exploration of Osunality?
Thank you for that question. Practicing mindfulness and being aware of the joys of being in the moment. What do we have? Through our senses, we can taste what's in our mouth and hear sounds and see beauty and aesthetically pleasing things, or feel touching things that we can sense. And so through these senses, I began to be aware of the pleasures that are available to me without judging. And it became awesome to be able to be in the moment and find the pleasures offered to my body. For example, the genitals are known to be the sex organs, but there are other organs that could be used for pleasure besides those parts. The mind, your ears can facilitate eargasms. Your mindgasms. There's so many different ways of experiencing joy and fulfillment and pleasures that our body can provide for us. There's a part of African philosophy that I really enjoyed learning about, is the concept of the inner genius, that we have the knowledge available to us. And so we tune into that part that can be nurtured through our teachers and our peers and our parents and our community, and to understand that we have truth, that we have access to truth that can be found within, can be very powerful, like happiness. Instead of searching out here for it as something attainable, constantly seeking, there perhaps is a lot to offer in our innerverse, in the abundance and the diversity and the multiplicity of ourself, and tuning into what is your purpose, what do you put here on earth to do, and to think about that and to begin to understand and explore. I'm really passionate about this, and there's people that we may not like, we may not agree with, and so that everyone to me can teach me something, whether it's what I don't want to be, how I don't want to live my life, or wow, that's really inspiring. I got a lot of compersion for that individual, that I feel joy that they're feeling joy, and perhaps I can bring joy into my life that makes sense for me, and really taking responsibility for my actions, and knowing that I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings, but being able to observe my thoughts and feelings without having that to be correlated to the actions or the reactions or something that I have to do because I've always done it this way or because I was conditioned to do that way. It's breaking free from that and being able to establish new ways of being and manifest. And
without
transformation happens in a very moment, and letting go of all the past ways. You are not obligated to be consistent with your past, particularly behaviors and patterns that have been problematic, have that self-sabotage, that don't lead to your progression, to your growth, to your transformation, to your expansion.
Letting all of those things go. I think you made so many very valid points. I'd start snapping and praising, obviously. But I think one of the things I really grasped, from what you said or began to feel in my visceral self, is that part of that letting go and what you described is not only us not judging others, but not judging ourselves. And that in not judging yourself, I think that that's one of the places where you can begin to let go and clear out so that you can tune in. And that fine-tuning really begins on that journey of self-love, which comes full circle back to non-judgment. So you, yes, detach yourself from, you are not the things that you do. You are not the thoughts that you have. You are intrinsically a whole being of light that is, as she said, full of truth, and that we have access to that truth by tuning in to that frequency, to that vibration. And the vibration that we speak of is love. And love, as you can see, being synonymous with liberation. So radical self-love being the very answer or key to unlocking all of this, allowing yourself to sense, and even if you have a reaction because of a trigger or a trauma, that you don't judge yourself by that.
Offer some compassion.
Yes, compassion with yourself, gentleness with yourself.
And letting go is a process. It's not a destination. I can say, oh, I let go of this thing. Whew, it feels so good to let it go. And then next moment, it's back. I don't know how I hold on to things that I don't even want to hold on to. But letting go. And I have to let go again. And the more I let go of it, the easier it becomes.
Yes.
You know, you gotta work that letting go. And there's things that can help you visualize. You know, there's things that can help assist in developing it's like a skill set. Letting go of a skill.
It's definitely a skill set. And I want to...
Radical self-acceptance as well.
Yes, I want to touch on visualization, and I want to touch on mindfulness. So earlier she mentioned, Dr. Clarke mentioned mindfulness. And mindfulness is a process where you become aware of everything in the moment that you're in with your senses. So what is it that you hear? What is it that if you have your eyes open, that you see? What is it that you smell? What is it that you're feeling in that moment? And then just kind of letting it flow and not like being attached to it or putting any judgments on it, but just being aware that it is, right? And then you have visualization meditation. And visualization meditation for me is something where you can begin to hold a picture, a sound, a feeling, and anything that you can perceive or imagine. The mind is so powerful. The help is right there with the feeling. But anything that you can perceive or imagine and hold that in yourself, in your mind, in the picture of your mind's eye, right? And hold it in your heart even more so that you have a feeling of that visualization. And the more you do that, the more that feeling becomes real for you, and you can identify when it is that you feel that. And that's what you want to go towards. That's when you begin to really find or understand or connect with what your passions are, as she was saying earlier. So there is a process to everything.
I'm grateful. Tuning into what you are grateful for.
Yeah. This is Queen Goddess Infinite Love. You're watching Conversations with Queen on Open Voice Media. I have here with me Dr. Zelaika Hepworth Clarke, the Jamerican sexologist. Dr. Clarke, tell us what you have coming up next.
Well, I'm really excited to discuss decolonizing sexualities and love with you all. It's a really important topic, special to my heart, that I'm going to share with you. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, everybody. Got a series coming out about decolonizing sexuality and love. You'll definitely want to catch this. Free your mind, the rest will follow.